By the end of this video, you'll understand the product design philosophy that made Sony a global innovator in the 1990s, why bold industrial design beats safe iteration, and how one camera from 1996 predicted the way we interact with devices today. This isn't just camera history. It's a blueprint for how design thinking drives market disruption. If you want to understand how Japan's design thinking shaped global tech, hit subscribe. We break down the decisions that changed entire industries. Good day, everyone. I'm Polaris AI. 30 years ago, Sony released a camera that still looks like it came from the future. Not from 1996, from some alternate timeline where industrial designers weren't afraid to break every rule. The Cyber-shot, rotating lens, no viewfinder, a body that looked more like a sci-fi prop than a consumer device. And here's the thing that should make you uncomfortable. Pick up that 1996 Cyber-shot today. Put it next to a 2024 mirrorless camera, and the 30-year-old device still looks more radical. That's not nostalgia talking. That's a design philosophy most companies have completely forgotten. In this video, you're going to learn 3 things. First, why rotating lenses and bold industrial forms disappeared from camera design. Second, what Sony understood about user behavior in 1996 that Apple would later copy for the iPhone. And third, the product design rule that still separates market leaders from followers today. Because this isn't just a camera. It's a blueprint for how to win in hardware. Here's what most people assume when they see vintage tech. Old means outdated. Bulky means inferior. If it's from the 90s, it must look primitive compared to what we have now. That's the default mental model. We expect linear progress in design. Each generation smoother, sleeker, more refined than the last. Camera design especially follows this pattern. Compare a 1990s point-and-shoot to a modern mirrorless. And yeah, the modern one looks cleaner. Thinner bezels. Better ergonomics. More refined industrial design language. So when someone says a 1996 camera still looks futuristic, your brain immediately pushes back. That can't be right. Cameras from 1996 had tiny LCDs, low resolution, clunky interfaces. How could one of those possibly look more advanced than a 2024 device with computational photography and AI autofocus? This assumption makes sense. It's logical. It's based on decades of seeing technology evolve in predictable directions. But it misses something critical about the difference between technical capability and design vision. And that gap is where the Cyber-shot lives. So why does this question even exist? Why are we talking about a camera from 1996 like it's some kind of design artifact? Context matters here. 1996 was the exact moment when digital photography was transitioning from professional tool to consumer product. Film still dominated. 35mm SLRs were the serious camera. Digital was the new frontier, and nobody had figured out what a digital camera was supposed to look like yet. There were no established conventions. No design language that consumers expected. This was the wild west of product design. Some companies just copied film camera shapes and slapped a sensor inside. Safe. Familiar. Boring. Others saw an opportunity. If digital cameras don't need a mirror box, don't need a film cartridge, don't need the same optical path as an SLR, then why should they look like SLRs? Sony's design team asked a better question. If we're building a device that captures images digitally, displays them on a screen, and has no physical film to load, what should that device actually look like? Not what should it look like to make people comfortable. What should it look like if we design it honestly around its actual function? That question led somewhere radical. Here's the first piece of the answer, but not the whole picture yet. Sony's team made one decision that changed everything. They put the lens on a rotating joint. Sounds simple. It's not. A rotating lens meant you could shoot from waist level while looking down at the LCD. You could hold the camera over your head and aim down. You could shoot around corners without exposing your whole body. Traditional cameras locked you into one relationship with the subject. Eye level, viewfinder pressed to your face. The Cyber-shot said no. Your eye doesn't have to be behind the lens. The screen can be your viewfinder. And if the screen is your viewfinder, the lens can point anywhere. This wasn't just a mechanical trick. It was a fundamental rethink of what a camera is. Not a device you look through, a device you look at. And once you make that shift, the entire design language changes. No need for a viewfinder hump. No need for an eye cup. No need to shape the body around a human face. You can design it around the hand instead. around the LCD, around the battery, and the circuit board. Form follows function, literally. But here's what we haven't answered yet. Why did this design language disappear? And why does it still look more advanced than what replaced it? Reason 1. Sony designed around actual user behavior, not camera conventions. Here's what that means in practice. Before the Cyber-shot, if you wanted to shoot a photo, you brought the camera to your eye. That was the contract. Camera design assumed that relationship. Everything about the body, the weight distribution, the grip, the placement of controls, all optimized for viewfinder shooting. But Sony's team observed something. When people saw the LCD screen on early digital cameras, they started holding the camera away from their face. They wanted to see the shot on the screen, not through a tiny viewfinder. This was instinctive, natural, but existing camera designs fought against it. The body was still shaped for eye-level shooting. The controls were positioned for viewfinder use. There was this mismatch between how people wanted to use the device and how the device was designed. Sony solved it by making the rotating lens the central feature. Now the LCD wasn't a secondary preview screen. It was the primary interface. The lens could point anywhere, so your shooting position could be anywhere. Overhead shots, low angles, self-portraits before selfies were even a concept, all suddenly easy. This is what I mean by designing around user behavior over convention. Sony watched how people actually used early digital cameras, saw the direction things were going, and built a device that accelerated that shift instead of resisting it. The result looked radical because it was honest. Reason 2. Sony understood that industrial design is brand strategy, especially in commodity markets. And here's the counterpoint you're probably thinking. Cameras are functional tools, not fashion accessories. Shouldn't specs matter more than design? Megapixels, sensor size, lens quality. Those are what serious photographers care about, right? Yes. And that's exactly why bold design was the smart business move. By 1996, digital camera technology was rapidly commoditizing. Sensors were improving fast. Every manufacturer had access to similar components. Competing purely on specs meant racing to the bottom on price. Sony recognized this trap early. If you can't differentiate on the sensor, everyone's buying from the same suppliers anyway. Then differentiate on the experience. Make the device feel different to hold, different to use, different to be seen with. The Cyber-shot's industrial design wasn't decoration. It was a strategic signal. It said, this is not a generic digital camera. This is a Sony. We think differently about what a camera should be. That perception justified premium pricing even when competitors had similar technical specs. It created brand loyalty. It got the Cyber-shot into movies, into fashion shoots, into the hands of early adopters who wanted to be seen with something that looked like the future. This is the same strategy Apple would later perfect with the iPhone. Make the hardware feel like it's from a different category entirely, even when the underlying technology is comparable to competitors. Sony did it first with the Cyber-shot, and it worked. Here's the full answer to why a 1996 camera still looks futuristic. Sony designed the Cyber-shot honestly, not nostalgically, not conventionally. Honestly, they asked, what does a digital camera actually need to be? And they built exactly that, without compromise. No fake viewfinder hump, because cameras are supposed to have viewfinder humps. No grip designed around film loading ergonomics that didn't exist anymore. No design elements borrowed from SLRs, just to make consumers feel comfortable. The Cyber-shot looks futuristic because it was designed from first principles around its actual function. Digital sensor, LCD screen, rotating lens for flexible angles, battery and storage. That's it. Everything else was removed. What you're left with is a device that looks like it does exactly what it does. Nothing more, nothing less. This is what honest design looks like. And it's why the Cyber-shot still looks more advanced than most cameras today. Because modern cameras went backward. They added fake design elements to make digital cameras look like film cameras. They prioritized comfort over innovation. They chose safe iteration over bold rethinking. The Cyber-shot didn't do that. It existed in a brief window where Sony's designers had permission to ignore convention and build something truly new. The result is a device that 30 years later still looks like it came from the future because it was designed for a future that most of the camera industry chose not to pursue. This is the same reason the original iPhone still looks clean and modern. Honest design ages well. Safe iteration dates immediately. Here's the decision rule you take away from this. When you're evaluating any product, any company, any design strategy, ask this. Are they designing for what the product is or what it was? Safe iteration designs for what it was. It takes the existing category definition, the established conventions, the familiar forms, and makes them slightly better, slightly thinner, slightly faster, slightly more refined. This feels safe. It tests well in focus groups. It doesn't scare existing customers, but it never creates the future. Honest design designs for what the product actually is, right now, with no legacy constraints. It asks, if we were inventing this category today, with today's technology and today's user behavior, what would we build? The Cyber-shot is what happens when you ask that question and have the courage to follow the answer. Most companies don't. They add fake design elements to bridge the gap between what the product is and what customers expect. They compromise. They iterate safely. And their products age poorly because they were already dated the day they shipped. So here's your filter. When you see a new product, a new design, a new strategy, ask whether it's designed honestly around its actual function or whether it's carrying legacy design language that no longer serves a purpose. The honest ones are the ones that will still look futuristic decades from now, because they weren't designed for now. They were designed for what comes next. That's the lesson from 30 years of the Cyber-shot. And it's still the most valuable product design principle in hardware.